the executive director of the New York State Democratic Party, along with Republican strategist Matt Schlapp. They're both here with me. Matt, I'll start with you. I mean, Bernie, who would have ever thought he would be this far along right now? He's going to take New Hampshire. He's within 2 points, you heard me say, of her nationally. This guy is a socialist. What has happened to the party that they're willing to look at a socialist twice?
Yeah, no, it is an amazing story. I mean, no one really thought that he would actually do as well as he did in Iowa either, which you really have a photo finish, basically a tie. New Hampshire, okay, I'll give him the fact that he's from Vermont. But if you look at these national polls and you look at other polls, Hillary Clinton might be their candidate of their head, but she is not the candidate of their heart. They simply don't really like her. She might have enough momentum and enough money and enough machine to get over the finish line, but it is going to be ugly. And all along the line, we're going to see that the Democrats are just not excited about the prospects of electing another Clinton.
That said, I can get, Basil, maybe some people don't like her, all right? But, you know, regardless of whether you like her or not, the guy running against her stands for something that we as a nation simply do not stand for. I mean, what's happened to the party that they're willing to go out on a limb and say, I want a socialist?
Well, I don't know if it's not. I wouldn't couch it as that Americans don't stand
we don't stand for socialism. Come on. You want to be like Greece? You want to be like Venezuela?
But what Bernie Sanders is talking, Bernie Sanders is talking about is punishment, and this is what's interesting. This is a nuance. What Bernie Sanders is saying is that, look, there are a lot of people who were responsible for our economic troubles over the last 8 or so years. Why haven't these people been taken to task? So I think those are some of the challenges.
Okay, so you get the old big bad Wall Street argument because he forgets that we are a capitalist nation and we need Wall Street to help finance our economy and finance businesses.
I'm glad that you say that, because that, I think, is the position that Hillary Clinton is taking. First of all, she is popular. That's why her poll numbers are the way they are. But the reality is that she is saying, look, yes, we can do some punishment, but we also have to work with them. Here in New York, for example, it's 20% of the state's budget comes from Wall Street. So it's not like you can get rid of them.
I'm glad you said that, and I'm glad you should remember that. Every Democrat in New York should remember that the majority of the tax revenue is actually coming from Wall Street. And it's funny because, you know, Chuck Schumer, he loves to bash Wall Street. Can you imagine if you were a senator in Michigan and you started bashing Detroit the way some of these guys bash Wall Street? Anyway, I digress. Back to this issue of whether or not Bernie stands a shot. Matt, I'm going to get back to you in a second, but Basil, what's going on? I mean, why are people rallying around him?
Well, I do think that there's some credence to the argument that he is engaging people's heart and emotion. That's absolutely true. But I think that's what's interesting about the difference between Hillary and Bernie. Bernie is talking about issues in a very emotional way. But if you're looking at solutions, you know, Bernie's very good at sort of pointing out the problem. But I think what Hillary is doing is taking a tack and saying, yes, there is a problem, but we also have to find solutions to those problems.
It's disturbing to me, and Matt, I'm curious to get your thoughts. I think it's somewhat disturbing that voters are just being all heart here, and they're not wanting to look at some kind of solution.
Well, look, what Bernie Sanders is saying is that he is the logical person to carry a torch. The Obama policies are left. They're the most left-wing policies we have seen in my lifetime for this country. No Democrat would ever pretend to be this left. They wouldn't get elected. He's actually been a socialist. He did by saying he'd be a different kind of Democrat, and then he turned out to be an old-fashioned kind of Democrat, and he's a very left-wing Democrat, and it's all about bigger government, higher taxes, and being weak in terms of the national stage.
So he has put us in such a situation. Our economy is so lousy right now that you get all these young kids out there saying, look, for the last 10 years I've gone nowhere. I might as well give socialism a shot.
The lowest unemployment in 8 years. How is that a lousy economy?
Oh, come on. No.
Because they don't have jobs.
He was out there today trying to sell that.
Wall Street is doing better than it ever has. Today's bump notwithstanding, but Wall Street is the best it's ever done.
Here's the problem, Basil. Wages have gone nowhere. Wages have gone nowhere in about 20 years, adjusted for inflation. 4.9% ain't what it used to be.
But here's what's interesting about that. If you argue that people aren't in the labor force because of wages, is that the president's fault? Because what he could do is something that he is talking about doing, which is raising the minimum wage, trying to get businesses to say, okay, I've done everything that I can to bring the economy
raise the
back.
minimum wage, I'll tell you, this is Econ 101. People are not going to hire as many people. You're going to figure out a way to do more with less.
And do their part.
Bobo, Matt, you know what? And this is the crux of the argument. I am going to continue this with you guys in just a little bit. Anyway, I want to move on right now because